So welcome, everybody. We're very, very happy to see you here today. And on behalf of the company and all of us working here, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. First Nations were dancing here thousands of years before we started to dance too. And my name is Karen Jameson. I'd like to introduce these extraordinary people that have been working with me. Whoops. Meredith Callanan. Darcy McMurray. So, here it goes. I warned them. Amber Barton, Lisa Jelly, Josh Martin. That when I introduce people in any nervous situation, especially if I'm stumbling on people's blocks, I will forget their names. We've been working now for 2 years, just on and off, like a week here, 2 weeks there. These dance artists are exceptional artists who are working in the field. They have their own practice, performing, creating, touring. But they very kindly agreed to come and study with me some pieces that I did many years ago. And just to warn you, this is supposed to be a very informal presentation, like a show and tell. But it's become quite long. So if you find you must leave and hopefully come back, please feel free to do so. We don't mind. Because all of the material, it's been such a rich process that to really share this process with you takes a bit of time. So with that, we hope that you will just feel able to, if you need to, come and go, and there's some children here. Must go if you need to go. So the focus of this research process, and what I wanted it to be was a dialogical process. I wanted to learn from them, and hopefully they learn from me, that we're moving information and ideas back and forth that are focused around 3 pieces from my past. They're all from the 80s that I felt had a contribution to make to the art form, because I understood these pieces to be mythic narratives. And what I mean by that is, this is based on the premise that within us we have an architecture of the soul, and that these ancient stories and beings that are calling mythic narratives, mythic images, are the makeup of this inner architecture, and that the dancer draws upon this energy, and that's what you see with the outer body. Now, these pieces that we took apart and deconstructed and put back together, they questioned, they challenged some things. Sometimes it was very difficult for me, but always this sense of amazing conversations around these works, that I'm very grateful to you for entering into this process with me. So I had some goals in this process. I wanted to go deeper into these pieces, but also what we're left with. This is a time in my life when I'm paying a lot of attention to archiving. And what we're left with is the dance translated into visuals. And when I don't really believe dance is a visual art form. I believe it's experienced through the body. Maybe that's why we're using this body to body. And that you might ask then why a proscenium setup. Because the proscenium flattens out the presentation to 2 dimensions. But all three of these pieces, I felt, were attempts to really subvert the proscenium, so that in Sisyphus, we're moving with depth back and forward to get a sense of the depth of his journey. In Solo from Chaos, we're trying to work with the sense of deep down, the journey to the underworld and coming back up, and using a ladder. In Man Within, which is about carrying people, we wanted you to feel the weight and feel both the burden and the empowerment of that journey. So I hope that was one process I was hoping to go deeper into understanding. And the other was to find out of what value it would be for artists working in 2019, pieces that were created 30, 40 years ago. And so I'd like to give the dancers an opportunity to talk a little bit about this process.
Yes. Why am I here? The main draw for me was not necessarily the pieces themselves, but I guess the historical context in which they were being made. And just having an interest in the history of dance in Vancouver, I thought it was especially a rare opportunity to sort of be with an artist who's looking back on a large body of work and who is having that perspective and to try and understand what that feels like, and to try and consider, as myself as a creator, what am I going to feel like in that position? What are going to be my questions about my work? What are going to be the things I care about and value, and what are the things that I'll just let go of? What are the things that I want to try and remember about what I've done? And so I just feel like it's a very potent time to be in the room with Karen as she sort of works through this past, bringing it back forward again.
Similarly, for me, it wasn't so much about the pieces, but as someone who's been practicing here for only about 10 years, I was super curious to know what kind of has gone on before. And I'd never worked with Karen before this project, and I just kind of wanted to see what the practice was like, what she was interested in working at the time that these pieces were made, how she was working, and from that I was able to kind of feel what remains similar in all of our practices, and obviously what is super different.
For myself, I feel like we're in a very much creation-driven production type of the way we make work. And I feel like for myself as a dancer, even with my own work, there's less and less opportunity to go back and revisit. So that was something I was really interested in. Also, being born and raised in Vancouver, all my training in Vancouver, my career in Vancouver, I felt like I wanted to go back and visit, in a sense, my dance heritage. And so by working with Karen, learning those pieces, kind of filling in the gaps of what I kind of know and what I don't know, and seeing how we're all connected through our community, and all points how they lead to other pieces made today and other people. And it's been really satisfying.
Can you all hear?
Yes.
For me, firstly, the piece that I was working on with Karen in this process, I learned from her about 10 years ago, and a couple years later we performed it as a duet. And I found the piece intriguing at the time, yet we were learning from the video and trying to adhere to the infrastructure we saw, and so this was an opportunity for me to revisit a piece that I was moved by, and maybe have a chance to peel it away and understand what essentially drives the piece, or what is, Karen refers to a mythic narrative, what's inherent there and what was superfluous, and we can let go. So it was a way of learning about how to investigate works. It was also, I was excited about the opportunity to work with Josh and Amber, two colleagues that I highly respect, and to be in a room with two other people who could contemplate intention and inspiration or ways to work. And so that was interesting to have more perspectives. And then even more so this past week with Lisa and Meredith, a lot of this process with Karen was about discussion. So we're not only dancing, we're trying to maybe gain a deeper understanding about this art form, its value, and so it was neat to be able to open up these discussions and ask more questions. And I guess I'm curious to see if there is a ripple effect from this process.
For me, I am interested in interpretation and ownership, and so when we were learning off the video, it's not necessarily a representation of, it's just a captured moment. So interested in how Karen was willing to let things go or change on our bodies, and where she was like, no, this is important, so we either found a different way to create that same energy or movement. And then I also was, in 2008, on my first tour with Karen, while she was working with Caroline Farquhar, who's in the audience, who was dancing this work. So it was fascinating to me when Lisa and I learned the part of the carrier a year ago, that business information had imprinted onto my body, even though I had not worked on this piece. I was in Sisyphus. So I was like, I don't know how I know this, but I think this is what happens here. Or this is some other bit. So seeing it worked on and rehearsed, but not engaging in it, imprinted.
Yeah. So, as Darcy mentioned, the discussions have been amazing. Just learning, moving in 2 directions, 3 directions, 7, 5. The discussions, but also this feeling of with them, through them, peeling away these pieces to some kind of essential core. And then I began to think, from working with them, that the need of the dancer's narrative almost working on this plane, and it's where those planes intersect that the piece comes to life. It's like the spirit of the piece comes to life, where the ancient story, if you put it in one dimension, and the current story inhabited. So to find that place of intersection, they need to be completely present in the moment. And you realize what that means, this present. So we're going to start then by showing you a version of Sisyphus. Now, Sisyphus was first created in 1983 with 7 dancers, and the lead role of Sisyphus originally is here, B2BSis. Oh my. And 7 dancers and a composer, David McIntyre. We worked together, but before we had met, I was really interested in the idea of dance as work, as dancers, as the laboring working class of the art form, the people who did the lifting, the heavy lifting, the work, the physical work. And the first thing we did when we started to work on Sisyphus is the whole company built a floor. We built a floor in a studio, and when we had built the floor, we created the piece Sisyphus upon it. And that seemed really, really important to us at the time. And Sisyphus was also created at a time when I was attempting to start building a company, something that I understood was just pretty much impossible to do. So pitting yourself against something impossible was also what Sisyphus was about. And it's interesting, if you think about it, that the mythic being of Sisyphus has turned up in painting, in poetry, in novels. There is Camus' essay on Sisyphus. In the creation process of Sisyphus, though, I didn't know it was Sisyphus. I was just looking for the path of greatest resistance. And that seemed to be the wall, to try to go through, try to go up the wall, gave us something really tangible to work this, this resistance against the impossible. And out of that came this work. In the first stage of our investigation or exploration of this piece, there were 3 of us. But first of all, I want to show you a painting from 1580, I believe it is, of Sisyphus. Video, go. And what was amazing was that he carried the boulder on his back in the same position that originally the woman carried the man and man within. I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah, good. So that first group of the 3 of us, it was very, very interesting. We learned the vocabulary, yeah? Learned the moves, the sequence, the piece. But I invited them to question it and to bring in their own sense of what might be Sisyphus or questions they had about what they'd just learned. And go video. This is the original group rushing to the wall.
Could you raise it up? It's on the floor.
That's where it's supposed to be. It's under them. They're dancing upon the
Projection
path.
looks better if you're sitting higher.
Hard to see.
You just got to take what you can get today. I'm sorry, it's an informal show and tell. And 2. Video go. This is Josh and Justine. So Justine Chambers, Natalie Lefebvre, Gadam, and Josh were the original 3, were the 3 in the first stage. And they brought to this opening a kind of developmental initiative. Watch out, oh, you'll see it when Josh does it. The coming off the wall just added more to the metaphor, the image of the boulder. And video go. This one called the spiral off the wall. And as you can see, it's a fairly dangerous move. Go video. Natalie brought in a variation on that I found really, really interesting, because at this stage in my life, I can no longer dance Sisyphus. Sisyphus is not an inclusive piece. And that really struck me, that that's true of many dance. And very much later, I've become interested in inclusive dance, and dance is healing. So Natalie's intervention, or having us all slow down to that crawl, first of all allowed us to really examine the movement, but it meant all of a sudden this is something I could do too. I don't know if you saw, I'm in there too. So go video. This is what we call the race. And go video. Video go. So this is Justine Chambers' offering to the puzzle of Sisyphus. She brought an impossible task to those dancers. They're doing the race, but at a very complicated, rhythmic, mathematical. But what amazed me is they kept at it, kept at it, kept at it until they got it. And that just affirmed for me this dancers as Sisyphus. They'll just keep doing it until it works. And most dancers will. And Josh, do you have anything to say about this process of?
Yeah, so a lot of the process was learning vocabulary, but also, as Karen said, like there were things about the recording of the video that she said didn't represent the piece properly. So there's this idea of like there was a time that it was really, really great, but we didn't get that one on film. You know, it's like that sort of thing. Of like, and so then it's about trying to find that. Like, well, okay, then what was it? Like, what was the good one? So it was like about trying to sort of offer our vocabulary, I guess, to her vision of what it should have felt like or what it should have looked like and that sort of thing. Mixed in with these other kind of propositions of like, well, what if we did it like this? What if we did it like this? So it was a lot of just kind of throwing out ideas that were all kind of around Sisyphus. And so, but we only had 3 bodies then to sort of do some of these things, so we couldn't even really approach some of the other stuff. And now we've only got one.
We got
body.
one.
So the question was, okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff we can't do or we can't represent. So how do we do that? And so the idea, Karen's idea, was basically just to take pieces or moments, images, concepts from it, and sort of just smash it together as more of a portrait of the role of Sisyphus or the embodiment of Sisyphus, or in the places that we really couldn't have any representation, maybe replace it with something else that might sort of do a similar thing.
Like the blocks.
Just ruined the surprise. Great. So yeah, we had to do a lot of just problem solving to kind of put it together, but it's really just in somewhat of a chronology of the piece. We do have Amber, who was part of one of the casts.
Yep.
Who is going to help us do one of the things, one of the images, so we can sort of get an idea. But yeah, we just thought it was kind of interesting to explore it now. A 7-person dance as 1 person.
And also something that Josh and Lisa told me that I did not know is that 605 built a floor when they started. So I was.
You have to tell them who 605 is.
Oh.
605 is our company. So our company also started by building a dance floor when we.
Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting kind of connection.
We like working too.
We like
We
working.
like working too.
Yeah.
Labor.
Labor, right. So, Josh will now show you Sisyphus as a solo. And what I've asked the dancers to do is to continue that sense of searching for that moment of absolute presence, whereby they can connect through their own narrative to this ancient story. And so this is still a very investigative process. And ready, Meredith, on the sound. And video go. Whoops. also want to mention that the costumes were by Susan Berganzi, who worked with me for years and years and years, creating costumes for many, many works. The collaborators I've always felt to be essential in these works. The dancers that I collaborate with, create with, the musicians, composers. The next piece that we want to show you our process of investigation is called Man Within. Man Within was originally created by Catherine Levinsky, Hiramoto Ida,